Over 7.4 million SMEs exist in the country, contributing to more than 40% of Kenya's GDP and employing millions of Kenyans. It's a great bracket for the Kenya Revenue Authority, yet many are either not well informed about what they call a complex tax administration process or have apprehension in dealing with the taxman. So how does one engage the Kenya Revenue Authority? Which taxes are due and when? Are there any tax incentives that exist for you as a small business owner? And more importantly, are there any benefits to being tax compliant? All of these questions, plus any that you might have, will be answered on the program Business Now today. Let's take a look at the highlights first. As an SME, what taxes are you required to pay and when? Why be tax compliant, and how can you engage better with KRA? And in our Made in Kenya segment today, 2 young Kenyan women creating an online marketplace for artisans and creatives. So we invite you to send in any questions you've got on tax measures, particularly for small business owners. Please do send them in, because my guests who are here with me are ready, willing and able to answer all of your questions. Remember to use the hashtag Business Now at Citizen TV Kenya, at Yvonne Okwara. My guests this afternoon, we've got CPA Edwin Makori, who's the CEO of ISPRA, the Institute for Certified Public Accountants of Kenya, and from the Kenya Revenue Authority, who are always very gracious to be with us here on the show. We've got Julius Yega, who's the Chief Manager, Taxpayer Services at the Kenya Revenue Authority. Please send in those questions. The hashtag is Business Now. As we go about this, we want to hopefully leave this show having answered all questions you may have on the taxation process. We'll be getting to that in just a moment, but allow me first to update you on the business news headlines this afternoon. Now let's start off with Associated Battery Manufacturers, ABM, that says that they face imminent closure due to the lack of raw materials. This they attribute to an incorrect interpretation of President Kenyatta's ban on scrap metal trade. They say local authorities have interpreted the directive to mean a ban on local trade as well. Their raw materials include lead from used car batteries. Now they say that several thousand jobs are at risk if the matter is not clarified. Now this comes as a scrap metal Dealers Association is set to give an update today on their talks with President Kenyatta over the ban. The Kenya Mortgage Refinancing Company has launched its first medium-term note program, through which it seeks to raise 10.5 billion shillings over the next 4 years. The cash raised from the program will be disbursed to primary mortgage lenders. The notes are available to investors with a minimum of 100,000 shillings and will be up for sale up until the 18th of February. The move seeks to raise sustainable long-term capital with the aim of reducing mortgage interest rates and making home ownership more affordable to Kenyans. And the term of the Board of Directors of the Rural Electrification and Renewable Energy Corporation has come to an end. Now, this comes after the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission backed the reappointment of the CEO. Complaints had been raised about the recruitment process, but the Ethics Commission found no impropriety in the hiring process. The Rural Electrification and Renewable Energy Corporation was hived off from Kenya Power in 2006 and is responsible for providing subsidized electricity in rural areas of Kenya. All right, so now you're up to date with what's happening in the world of business. Remember, we'll have more for you in our bulletins at 9 o'clock. But let's now get into our discussion regarding taxes and SMEs in this country. A quick reminder that your questions are more than welcome. The hashtag is Business Now at Citizen TV Kenya, at Yvonne Okwara, and we'll have them answered by my guests once again, CPA Edwin Makori and Julius Yega. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us today. I think the most natural place to begin is with you, Julius. Talk to us about, SMEs and taxation. Just an overview of what taxes apply to those in this sector.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. And I think it's important, first and foremost, for us as KRA to acknowledge the fact that you've invited us. We are very grateful about this. For us in Kenya Revenue Authority, who is an SME? Because it's always good to understand who is your taxpayer and who is your customer in that case. So for us in Kenya Revenue Authority, an SME is that trader whose turnover is between 1 million to 50 million. 1 million to 50 million. So if your income is in that range, then to us you are an SME. And something very important is that we always try as much as possible to let the SME know their rights, know the obligations. But the most important thing is for the taxpayer to understand the tax cycle. You could be an SME outside there, but do you really know what you're supposed to do? For KRA to recognize you as an SME or as a taxpayer, the first thing that we must do, you must be a registered taxpayer. In other words, you must be having a PIN number. It could be individual, it could be business, but we only know that you are a registered SME when you have a PIN number. Secondly, having PIN number is good, but the second thing is you must file your returns. And that's very important. Because you see, we have so many SMEs, but they don't file their returns. They are not registered. So for us as Kenya Revenue Authority, these are very critical to us. And now, once you file your return, you must pay your taxes on time. Yeah? We ask you to pay your taxes on time. And that, of course, relates to what we call the due dates. Yeah? So due dates are very critical for us as Kenya Revenue Authority, because failure to pay on time would lead to penalties and to an extent to some interests. Yeah? Last but not least, and very critical, that the taxpayer must give us accurate information. And accurate information here we mean, who is this taxpayer? What is their physical address? What is their email address? How do we contact them? As Kenya Revenue Authority, we'd want sometimes to come back to the taxpayer. But when we do not have the right information about this taxpayer, then that becomes a challenge. So those four aspects are very, very important to us.
Okay.
Yes.
And it's important that you talked about, the obligations of the SME as a taxpayer.
Yes.
Then what are the reciprocal obligations of KRA then?
Yes. As Kenya Revenue Authority, ours is to ensure that the taxpayer is given the right information, is given capacity to know that if, say, it's an SME, he has two options. He can choose to be on turnover tax, or he can decide to choose to be on income tax. Now, this is important. And for us as Kenya Revenue Authority, what we do, and we do it for free, is to train the taxpayer. We offer capacity to the taxpayers. We train them either through sector-based training or newly registered taxpayers. We ensure that we train them so that they know about the tax laws that govern their businesses. Something else that we need to let you know as KRA, our reciprocation, is that we will always try to serve you within the timelines. We have service level agreement based on our service charter. So KRA has a service charter which can be found on our website, and taxpayers are expected to visit our website so that they know their rights. And why is it important for them to know their rights? So that at the end of the day, when they come to us, they'll be coming to us from a point of knowledge. I've talked about facilitation. I've talked about giving them the right information so that they know their rights. And I'm also saying that in the unlikely event that a taxpayer has a challenge, a taxpayer has a complaint, we also give them audience to reach us. And it is important maybe to give that email address where taxpayers can be reaching us, more so when it is tax to do with the domestic tax department. DTD complaints, as one word, at kra.go.ke.
Okay.
That is critical.
And we'll definitely be giving that again at the end of the show, just as a recap.
Yes.
I mean, I will come to CPA Makori in just a moment. Which general taxes, how does one know which tax applies to them? There's turnover tax, there's DST, there's VAT. Just give us a general overview of those taxes and when they're due. There's whatever is due on the 9th, something is due, there's installment tax, then there's annual tax at the end of it. I mean, you would understand how this would be a challenge for SMEs that are really just struggling to get by. So take us through at least those taxes that apply to those in the SME sector.
Thank you very much. Let's say for an SME, if an SME has decided to go for turnover tax, which is exactly what we are encouraging to do, to be on turnover tax, the due date is on 20th of the following month. Let's say you have been doing business in the month of January, you are expected to pay your turnover tax or to file and pay before 20th of the next month. So the due date is on 20th. But if the SME has employees, then the SME has an obligation to pay as you earn. And pay as you earn is always due on the 9th of the month following the month when the salary was earned.
Right.
Now that is important. Now, if the SME is having businesses or services and goods that are VATable, and their turnover is more than 5 million in a year, is supposed to register for VAT. Now that is also very important. Yeah. So those are the main taxes that is expected to actually be handling, and that's why I'm happy to be with ISPRA CEO, because we expect that once we have given the tax laws and we have given the guidelines, them as the people who are now either guiding them or their advisors, we expect them to be, again, spreading the same gospel. So basically, those are the taxes that we're talking about. They also have excise tax, which is also very important in case they are involved in goods that require that they pay excise duty.
And then there's DST, let's not forget, because many young people are doing their businesses online.
Digital service tax is very important, and it is also there, but most of the time, we are finding very few people going on that, but we are really encouraging them that in case they have more issues to do with the DST, they can always come to us so that we update them.
All right.
Thank you.
CPA, what seems, in your view, because you deal a lot with the SMEs, and we'll talk about some of the services or assistance that you provide those in the SME sector. Would it be a correct assumption or assessment that those in the SME sector have an apprehension in dealing with tax administration matters?
Thank you, Yvonne, and thank you for inviting me to the Institute to this interesting conversation about taxes. I think the one thing that we need to be able to appreciate is that the SME, as you said, there are 7.4 million SMEs in Kenya. They employ around 14.1 million Kenyans. 93% of them employ between 1 and 10 people. So basically, these are micro enterprises that are operating on a low scale level, although the turnover might be 1 million, between 1 million and 50 million. There are a number of challenges that will come in with that. One is, if you're operating just as yourself and maybe one other individual, or you're a mama mboga, for example, there is an issue of financial literacy that comes in. Because most of these then will not be able to know how to prepare the financial statements, are not fully informed about what taxes to be able to be paid, how to be able to maintain their books so that when they submit their records to KRA, then they are able to pay the right taxes. And at the same time, the issue of being able to file in iTax, as much as we say it is a self-declaration, the tables that are in iTax, and I'm not in any way saying that we should oversimplify what we have, is that sometimes it's scare. And if you're not a practitioner or somebody who understands how the tables work, then it throws you off. And that alludes to why we actually see the tax returns that are filed. Because we have 8.6 million Kenyans who should be able to file their tax returns. 4.3 of them file the tax returns every year. So with that, there's actually a need to be able to have professionals link and bridge that particular gap on being able to guide through the SMEs to be able to file their tax returns. As much as I say this, I recognize that most of those in SMEs, as much as you're saying the turnover should be 1 million, most of them the turnover is not 1 million, it's less than 1 million. So what it means is that the scale of operation might not be as high, and yet they are representing 24% of our GDP in the country. So what we actually need to be able to do is just work with them and provide them both on a pro bono basis and the capacity building that KRA is actually providing to be able to put in place the proper records that will actually afford them to pay taxes.
Great. And I want to talk about that for a moment, because we'll get into the sort of assistance that would be required. Many of, like you said, you know, operating on a very small scale, SMEs don't have the capacity, you know, they can't afford an auditor, you know, someone who'll come in and take a look at their books. So a lot of these things are, you know, being done by them themselves. And you mentioned financial literacy being a big thing. So even before they come to you and say, you know, link me up with somebody who can help me file my taxes, or if they're able to do this directly with the KRA, what are those key records that they must keep? Because certainly they must bring some records to you that you would then use to help them file their taxes.
I think one of the keys is just to be able to have a record of all the transactions that have been carried out from the beginning of the year up to the end of the year. Any
so
payments,
that's income expenditure.
Any payments. No, first is the receipts, because any time you sell, you must keep a record of what you've sold.
Yep.
Then two is expenditures that they're going to make in that particular year. And you see, for those expenditures, then you need to have supporting documents, even with the sales that you're making. Because some of them, KRA will tell you they're allowable expenses and disallowable expenses. So, and that is where you need to be guided by a professional to be able to tell you what are the allowable expenses and what are the disallowable expenses. That you have to be able to show even as you file your tax returns. But the first thing is, let's have that record of all your revenues and all your expenses documented well, in a way that you are able to tell what transactions you carried out in January, what transactions you carried out in February, what transactions you carried out in March, all the way to December. Besides that, there's obligation, as much as there's indication that they need to be able to pay payee, is up to a certain threshold. If I'm going to pay my employees 10,000 shillings, then you realize those are not subject to tax. But you see, there are other deduction, NHIF, that needs to be able to be deducted
NSSF,
from there,
and
statutory deductions that need to be able to be deducted from there. And what my colleague was also saying about, if you're going to pay VAT, if there is VAT, then there's another obligation to be able to actually remit the VAT by the 20th of each month. And what that requires is that you have to have a record to be able to have to understand VAT comes in with input and output. Input meaning from all the expenses that you'll have carried out, there's going to be some element of VAT that is going to be incurred as you buy an item to go and sell. You'll be charged by where you bought VAT.
The item,
When you're selling the item, there's VAT that is going to be charged on. You're going to charge VAT. And there's more or less of a set-off. The net difference is what you pay to KRA.
And also just important to know if your business is VATable. Because there are some businesses that are exempt. I think like those in the health sector, you know, amongst others. So important, like you said, to keep good records, you know, just as a start. So we shouldn't just come to you and say, CPA, I have... So
that should not be the notion. We can actually assist you. I mean, I've seen businesses where they have these 3 buckets. One bucket is of all the receipts that for all the payments that they've made. Another bucket is for all their bank statements from the bank. Another bucket is for all the receipts they've made from the sales that they've done in that particular year. A professional should be able to construct your financials from that information. But
like you said, having those records
those records is what is important.
Yes, absolutely. You look like you wanted to say something before I ask my next question.
That's important. You know, why we came up with turnover tax is because we realized those challenges that the taxpayers were having. And that's why when they came over to say that they thought that our tax rate was very high, the SMEs actually came and we had a big meeting with them. And this is when the TUT was reduced from 3% to 1%. And what we are saying, and I'm happy CP is here, this is not difficult mathematics. If let's say somebody has has a turnover of 10,000,
yeah,
then you'd be able to know that the 1% of turnover of 10,000 is this much. That's why we're trying to simplify this tax as much as possible. And my appeal to the SMEs is that we really want most of them to go for turnover tax, because it is a very simple thing. And it's a final tax. They are not required to
so they wouldn't file
They won't
anything.
file.
Okay.
That is just, once you've filed on that month, that's all. And then something else which is important about, again, the TOT is that earlier on, it was between those whose turnover was between 500,000 to 5 million.
Yeah.
But when the COVID came, and that's why we say that, and CPA, you should be letting your taxpayers or your customers know this. When the government gives an incentive that is supposed to be taken by the taxpayers, let's run to it. That is when it was now raised from 500,000 to 1 million.
Yeah.
And the bottom line was that to leave the people whose turnover is lower, the one who was talking about Mama Bogas and all that,
Yeah.
they are not supposed to be in that bracket.
Okay.
Yeah? And so that is why we are saying that. And when you have a company whose turnover is in the 40 million in a year, of course you expect that company to be really, really engaging and should therefore be able to respond to some of those issues that we raise.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to mention.
I just have a few more questions because I can see there's so many that are coming in, and so I really want to leave this this forum to having their questions answered.
Easy.
So let me just ask a few more. So we've talked about what taxes are due, when we've talked about the importance of record keeping. So let's talk about if there are any incentives. And I know you were telling me about this, Julius, for a business, are there any ways they can take advantage of tax laws to be able to, pay less tax or get some relief or incentives here and there for small businesses?
Yeah, that's very true. Yesterday when we were discussing, I mentioned to you that when a business has, for example, employees who can be registered in registered pensions, then there's an advantage to that. They're allowed certain exemptions when they're coming to paying their taxes.
Yeah.
And CPA here should be very much conversant with that. Yeah, CPA, there was even this aspect of, what do you call it? The university graduates, if somebody is employed 10 people, or the ones with the TVETA graduates, if you employ about 10 of them, and you're an SME, for a minimum of 6 months, there are certain rebates that you're given. And now those are the advantages that we are saying that SMEs should be taking advantage of those kind of benefits to see to it that such are taken into account. Yeah, even to an extent on per diems and all that. Yeah, so I didn't want to talk much about that because that is the domain of CPA.
We don't want your employer to think that you are giving the rest of us ways of getting around the system.
Maybe just to be able to put it in a simple way.
Yes, CPA.
I think the most scary thing for businesses is when they just make a sale and they assume that sale, they have sold 100 shillings, then the entire amount of 100 shillings is subject to tax. Yeah. What happens is that if you sold 100 shillings, there's 16% VAT that needs to come out to be able to get you to the net. So if you do that, that will give you maybe 84 shillings or something like that out of the 100 shillings. Yeah. Of the 84 shillings, if you spend to be able to pay electricity 2 shillings, and you spend to be able to bring that particular product before you sell it, their selling expenses maybe might have been 5 shillings. What the KRA is talking about, payee. Yeah. You have employees. Those become part of the deductions that you have to do from the 84 shillings. I'll have bought a few items in
You'll have paid
my
water,
office.
perhaps.
You'll have paid water.
Right?
I'll have bought seats.
Yeah.
They qualify for a deduction within the 84 shillings. So what we realize that at the end of, once you deduct all that, it might come to around maybe 30 shillings. The tax that you pay is on the 30 shillings after deducting your expenses. Yes. So there are incentives already that are going to be provided in being able to do this. And the additions is where you have interns that you bring in place. It was 10% of the amount that you're going to be able to spend on that. So those are part of the incentives that you get into that. And in any case, if you are going to get into a loss position, even for VAT, there's a way KRA is able to carry that forward, and you're actually able to utilize that negative position into the subsequent payments that you're going to be able to get to make to KRA.
So before this sort of goes away, tell us about what sort of services that you offer, because like we said, I think at the start of this, SMEs may not have access to an audit firm. I mean, those seem to be the things for the much bigger companies, or to that sort of assistance. Like you were saying, people will come with a bucket. One has the bank statements, one has receipts, one has expenses. But you know, what sort of, you know, can we come to ISPAC and say, look, I have my small business, I have 5 employees or 7 or 8, I need this help in terms of filing?
Yvonne, maybe just to be able to mention, I mean, part of the initiatives that we've just undertaken for even SMEs. I think we have a good project running with the county of Laikipia, where it's just being able to create financial literacy for the SMEs there. And what happens is a monthly thing to be able to just educate them on what records or what is it that they need to, how do they keep their books. And you'll be surprised, even when we had the first sessions with them, they didn't even know how to be able to write that receipt in such a way that it can help them be able to be seen as an accountable document.
And what are some of those ways, if we may get into that? Of writing a proper receipt?
Yes.
What are the key elements?
Having the proper amount being recorded on the receipt, from whom, being able to show the figures properly, so that, and then the date when that particular sale was made. If there are any discounts that you're going to give on that particular sale, you don't need to be able to put in the gross, but you need to be able to take care of the, I mean, if I sold it if I was made to send at 20 and sell it at 18, there are 2 options. You either record the 20 and then show that you also provided a discount of 2 shillings, so you received 18 shillings. And then being able to reflect that in a book. And what we're trying to do is not to take them to a proper cash book, but just being able to say, on this day, I sold to Yvonne 18 shillings. So that you also have a record of what the sales are. And that has worked well to be able to see that we provide that on a pro bono basis through our members, to be able just to educate them how to run through that. The other program that we started off last year was the Zisha program. And the Zisha is just a target to be able to see that we enhance compliance of tax. And being able to look at that in a way that the taxpayer doesn't have to worry about the tables in iTax, but we have a professional who is able to link and be able to assist in doing that. So what happens is that the taxpayer will log into the Zisha platform. They'll be able to set what is it that they want to do. Is it pay? Is it VAT? Is it a corporation tax? Is it withholding tax? Then we are able to assist them on how to go around it and be able to file that at convenience. Because as much as we say that even with turnover tax, yes, they'll go and pay. It's easier to calculate and go and pay it in the bank. But the other part is now being able to come and record that in the iTax system. So most of these will need a professional, and why we're also hinging that on being able to get a professional, and my colleague here will agree. If you look at developed world, US, Australia, UK, name it, most of those, France, Germany, they have the tax professionals filing the taxes for the masses.
For the masses.
For the masses,
yes.
So you will always find the contact is the tax professional with the tax administration authority. So we're also trying to push this to our Kenyan environment where you have the right professional, you link with the right professional to be able to file the taxes as appropriate. What we also found out is that most people go to the cyber cave to be able to
file their
returns. But you will be shocked that they'll even tick for you tax headlines that you're not actually meant to be able to pay. So KRA will
because you don't understand the process, and then KRA comes to you and says, well, okay, what's happening
will be
here?
demanding taxes from you because you take those yourself. Right? They're assuming that you did it by yourself. So with a professional, then it becomes easier to be able to get into the right tax brackets, so that now you are able to pay the correct taxes
and file correctly. Look, before we go into the questions from our viewers, what's the benefit, or of being tax compliant? I mean, we're talking about this, and you're saying some businesses might need to take this a step further. So, what benefit is there to being compliant with your taxes, CPA?
I think just going by the Constitution first, Chapter 6 is a requirement that you have to be tax compliant, and therefore, with any government institution where you're going to go, or any entity, the first requirement is your tax compliance certificate. And you need to be able to show that you are an obedient taxpayer.
Yeah, so like if you want to do business with a government entity.
If you have to access loans, even from the bank, I mean, one of those documents that they'll ask is your tax compliance, and being able to see that you're actually remitting your taxes to KRA. And therefore, it boosts your credibility of being a legitimate business that is actually transacting in the country. And lastly, is just being able to give back and being able to see. You see, we always say, we want this. Can the government be able to provide us with certain services? If we don't pay taxes, then the government will not be able to provide us with the services that we need. So we have to be able to provide those particular sources of revenue to the government for them to be able to
provide services.
To provide services to the common man.
Okay. Julius, you want to just add something, and then we get into the questions?
That's all right. I think for me, I would also look at it from a very different angle. That, last year the government came up with an incentive of supporting the SMEs because of the COVID pandemic. Now, what happened is that a body was formed, the C Credit Guarantee Scheme. And you see, for you to qualify for that, you must be tax compliant. The bottom line is that money being given by the CGS is from taxes of Kenyans. So if you want to get it and you're not tax compliant, then there's a disconnect on that. And then something else which is important is that when you're tax compliant, there's no problem really that you'll be having. Nobody will come to you to cheat you. Dishonest people won't come your way because you're doing the right thing all the time. And on the same note is that there are very many fraudsters around who will be telling you, we are from this place, if you don't do this, you're not compliant, this will happen. Those will be things of the past for you at that point in time. So tax compliance is very, very important. And as KRA, we encourage voluntary compliance. Come out on your own, do it. And something you mentioned earlier on, which I thought is important to talk on, the way we pay taxes. We have M-Service, which is an app. It is very, very important that SMEs know that that is now in place, and even use of the M-Pesa to pay your taxes.
So now, you don't have to come.
You don't have to come, Times Tower, And last but not least, KRA is spread all over the country. We are in all areas, including Huduma centers. And that's why I was saying that our work is to facilitate the taxpayer. So they should not be having any problem. Where you cannot reach us, please reach us via email or through telephone contact or something like that. And that is why we think that they should feel free to come over, talk to us, call us. Yes, thank you.
Indeed. And that is what many of you are doing right now on social media. So I see your question, Julius Kiambati, you're asking what withholding tax is. I see that question. There is also a couple of others that I'm seeing here from social media. Let me see this one. Bernardo Law, how do I get the PIN for my SME, and at what turnover should I pay tax? So there's quite a few that are there. Please continue to send more of yours in. Collins, I see your tweet with a question as well. Keep them coming. The next segment of this is all dedicated to answering your questions with my guests here on Business Now. It's all about SMEs knowing and understanding the taxation process and what your obligations are with respect to that. So keep your questions coming in. The hashtag is Business Now at Citizen TV Kenya, at Yvonne Okwara. Back in a moment. Yeah, the questions are coming in, and there are very many. So let's get into them real quick right here. So Julius Kiambati asked, what's the withholding tax? Julius, I think this one goes to you. And who's eligible for paying withholding tax, Julius?
Good. For the sake of this interview, I want to give a very good example. You say, let's say you're a professional and you've gone to offer services to any institution. They are expected, but that when they are paying you, they don't give you all the payment. They have to withhold part of that payment of yours so that they remit it to Kenya Revenue Authority. Now that tax, which is withheld, is what we are referring to as withholding tax. Okay? Yes.
How much is it? What's the percentage?
We do it in terms of percentages.
Yes.
So for professionals, we're talking about 5%. It used to be 10%, but it's now at 5%.
Okay.
Maybe CPA, you want to add something on that?
Yes, it's 5% for locals and 15% for
foreigners.
For foreigners. Yes. But what happens is that, as a way of KRA also being able to collect taxes in advance, then you are able to pay a certain portion of what you're going to earn as a professional to KRA. But it's not a final tax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'll have to also file in your returns. And if you're an individual, then you'll still be subjected to further tax, which depending on the brackets, the tax brackets that you're in, to be able to pay the additional tax.
Okay.
For a company, then it will be net of that out of the 30%. Then you net off the withholding tax.
Okay.
So it depends on how you look at that.
And I really want to ask this because for many people who provide professional services, you will know this. I've made this mistake myself. It is 5% that is withheld by the person, paying you for whatever services you've provided. But the total tax is actually 30%, is it not?
True.
So when you are filing, there's a 25% that you need to account for?
True. And this is not a, that's what I said, is not a final tax. There's withholding tax, which is a final tax on dividends.
Okay.
That's now a different way of looking, because once you get dividends from a company, then you are going to be deducted a withholding tax, which is then remitted to KRA as a final tax.
Yeah.
But for an individual who's going to be able to operate as a professional, that tax is only deducted to be able to have an advance payment to KRA. And so a way of accountability. You see, we would not know that Yvonne went somewhere and offered this service. Okay. Now, when the withholding is done, but they give you the withholding certificate. Yes. So that when you are now filing your return, you ensure that you attach that. Okay. Yes. And that's what you were saying, that it is, not a final tax on the same. Okay. So here's another question, and I think this one. Let's just answer this one, as well, whether it's from a business or not. You call yourself Baba Watoto. And in fact, you've written Baba Watoto Sita, so we shall assume we are free to make whatever assumptions from that. You say, so Baba Watoto says there are people who had the KRA PIN but had no jobs. So when these things about filing tax returns came, they didn't file but were penalized. How can they go about such? So when you have a PIN but you're not employed, you're still required to file. Yes. And what do you file? Because you have no income. No, you file an ill return. Okay. Yeah, you file an ill return. And maybe it's important for us to know, as long as you are a registered taxpayer, you remember when we started, I said there are 4 things that we must always remember. That once you are registered with a PIN, you must file your returns. So if you didn't do any business, you didn't have any income on that time, file an ill return. Okay. And we'll be very happy to account for all of us. And so what happens if you don't? Then now, anyone who has dealt with KRA will know those emails that come and it's a 14-day demand notice. This is failure to any response from your end. We shall be required to take based on the law. You know how strongly worded those emails are. But what happens if then you didn't work, or your business had, you had no income, but you didn't file, and now you want to, so how do you there's a way you can regularize We have an opportunity for that. Okay. Yes, that is why we have what we call TSOs, tax service offices. Okay. You see, you've had people belong to west of Nairobi, north of Nairobi, and all that. And I said at the beginning that we are spread all over the country. KRA is there for you, and you're also there for KRA. Walk into Kenya Revenue Authority, yeah, or call Kenya Revenue Authority and say that in this year, and of course there will be definite documentary evidence. If you didn't have any business, you didn't have it, definitely. But there are people who say they didn't have, and yet they sold to somebody else. You see, you know the idea of withholding tax. Yvonne or CPS said that he didn't do any business that year, but then the person you offered that service is letting us know from the other quarter.
They're remitting.
They are remitting, and they're saying this was done by Yvonne. Yeah, so that's why we have to have penalties, and that's why we have to have interest.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if we didn't impose penalties, then we would not be working.
Okay, so
I think just respond to that also, and being able to put so that the audience can actually be able to understand. If you didn't transact and you are not able to file the tax returns that time, you still have an opportunity under iTax to be able to file that nil return.
Yeah.
The only thing is that it comes with a cost of 20,000 shillings as a penalty for late filing.
Okay.
So you will still file the nil tax return, but
there'll be a penalty.
There'll be a penalty at the end to be able to pay, so that nil return is accepted by KRA.
And I think that's why it's also important to take advantage of the tax waivers. You know, we see that from KRA once in a while, saying, okay, mumefanya makosa, but if you come within this period, we can work on that. Francis Rono has a tweet here. He says, been having lots of problems deregistering VAT tax obligation that was erroneously registered for, and all efforts to visit KRA offices online and I think physical haven't been helpful. Now I'm accruing penalties monthly.
Wow. That's a bit unfortunate.
Yeah.
We are always there for taxpayers. I wish he could be able to let us know where he is, but there's no problem. I'll give, you remember the email address I gave?
Yes.
He can send that to that email address.
All right. And that email address is?
DTD complaints.
DTD complaints. We can respond right here.
Yes. At KRA.
At KRA.go.
Yep. .ke.
Okay.
Yeah, let him write.
Okay.
Let him raise that complaint, and we'll be able to respond to him.
Okay.
Immediately, my team on the ground will see that. It's instant here.
Okay.
He'll be able to see.
Okay.
So just assure Rono that
it's not a straight jacket about that. And you see, this is what we are talking about. People go to the cyber caves, they have their PIN up registered.
In fact, that's what you were saying, wasn't it? Yes.
And you felt that you've been registered to tax obligations that actually don't fall on you. As much as Julius is saying that just go to the complaints, you will have to have an obligation to be able to show that you've not sold any vertible items. I think one of the things that they'll do is just to be able to check from their records if there's anyone who has declared if you've sold any vertible item, because they'll have withheld.
We counter check. You know, we counter check.
I see.
As I told you,
it's a process. So it's not just something that will just you go lodge the complaint and it just go off. There's also an obligation that the taxpayer to be able to actually prove that they did not sell in that particular period any vertible item.
I see.
Yes.
I have one last quick one before we wrap it up. Colin says, how do I know whether the company I work for is submitting my taxes? Is there something similar to a withholding certificate for employees? Do you want to take that, and then Julius can take it later? On the iTax system, is there a place I can go and check that my employer is doing what they're supposed to? Because you know taxes are deducted at source.
You can actually get a statement from iTax system on all the taxes that have been paid by your employer. So you'll actually be able to see where the gaps. It will actually, once you print the printer, it will show you where the gaps are. So you actually don't need to struggle, because I mean, we have to credit KRA for the milestones that they've done in technology. Immediately that is paid in the bank, and the remittance is actually uploaded to the iTax system. It automatically updates your account. So there's a section within the iTax system where it shows you need to be able to get your statement. You'll define the period in which you want to get the statement, and it should be able to show you all the taxes that have been
so
paid.
Every month it'll show you monthly.
It will show you monthly.
All right, Julius?
Actually, I want to just add that, you know, that's why I keep on telling people, taxpayers, that KRA is your point of contact. Just send us your PIN number. We'll be able to tell whether there are those payments made on your behalf or not. Okay? It is important.
Okay.
And so it's doable and it's knowable. You
All
can
right.
do that, yeah.
I just have one last one. I know I'm really running out of time. Damiana Stum says, if one opens a new company, must he or she include an obligation of VAT while applying for a new PIN?
No, and I think it's important, and I'm happy CPA did mention that earlier on. When you are opening a new company, I talked about taxpayer registration,
yes.
But there's something else I need to talk about was taxpayer recruitment. When you talk about recruitment, it means we are giving you the tax obligations that you are supposed to qualify for. So when you open a new company, it is good for you to visit that TSO. They will guide you. They'll tell you, you've done this, but what do you want to do? I want to do A, B, C, D. Then now we'll be adding you those obligations.
And you qualify for VAT tax when you, at what point
turnover,
in your business?
Turnover must be 5 million.
Your turnover must be 5 million. Okay,
and
so you start small and, you know, and then once you start to hit a turnover of 5 million, then now you apply for VAT.
Yeah, and also when what you're engaged in, the
Yes.
services are goods, are vatable.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, all
Thank
right.
you.
Gentlemen, so many questions, so little time. I think we'll have to leave it at that for now. I mean, I think a show on taxation is one we need to have more and more.
Thank you.
And have all of that, definitely some more. CPA Edwin Makori, who's the CEO of ISPRA, thank you very much. Julia Siega, who's Chief Manager Taxpayer Services at the Kenya Revenue Authority. Gentlemen, thank you for coming and for helping us understand our tax obligations a little bit more and why this is important. Okay.